Leagues 4 is finally here and it'll release in about an hour probably by the time this video goes live. We just got the full release of all of the tasks and relics, and in this video we're going to cover every single relic and the passives we're getting for each individual tier. To kick things off, we have tier 1, which you get with 0 points right out of the gate. The passives we're getting are 2 times drop rate, unlimited run, and then clue scrolls will drop as stackable scroll boxes. It's also an easy thing to note is that you only get steps for clues that you can complete in your regions. And for our first tier 1 relics, I'm not going to go into too much detail because we have had these for some time, but they are Endless Harvest, Production Prodigy, and then Trickster. Endless Harvest being the big AFK tier 1. Production Prodigy's best aspect is the 25% chance for a player to successfully make an extra product with each action. Obviously, on top of that, you also get a plus 12 boost for crafting, smithing, herblore, fletching, and cooking. And then all of your actions for production skills are activated immediately. Lastly, then we have Trickster, which is a massive bump to your thieving, agility, hunter, and then some to fire making. Next up, we have the tier 2 relics. These you will be able to unlock with 500 points. And with this tier, the League XP multiplier will increase from 5x to 8x. And mini-game points received are automatically tripled. The two we have are Fairy's Flight and Globetrotter. Globetrotter is a pendant that'll basically give you all of the teleport locations inside of the Nexus and the Ornate Jewelry box combined. And then the Fairy's Flight buff this league around was all of the Fairy Rings, Spirit Trees, and then the additional one is now the Tool Leprechaun locations. And if we pull up the Tool Leprechaun, you can see all of the locations that the Fairy's Flight will give you access to. And this one might be more important depending on what regions you are picking. But you can use this to easily see whether your region is worth taking Fairy's Flight or just sticking it out with Globetrotter. Tier 3 we get at 1200 points, and this would be what I consider to be one of the most competitive early game relic tiers we have to pick from. Oh, and a very important thing to note right here. The passive effects, you are given the Crystal of Memories. Judging by the solo mission tips and tricks videos we saw, we assumed we were getting it right out of the gate. That's not the case. We're not getting the last recall relic until you get to tier 3 with 1200 points. So with this tier 3, you get the last recall relic abilities with the Crystal of Memories. The cooldown immediately starts at 6 minutes, but this is dependent on your total level. It's reduced by 1 minute for every 300 total levels you have, finally turning into no cooldown at 1800 total. But now for the actual relics in tier 3, we have Banker's Note and Fire Sale. Banker's Note is the relic that gives you a note that allows you to use notable items on it to turn them into banknotes or unnote them. And there's also an activate option that allows you to note and unnote items automatically in one action with the specific quantity that you've chosen. Scenarios you could easily use are bringing skilling supplies into something like a raid and just constantly skilling as you're running around. The more obvious choice is you can easily bring more food and potions into any PvM place you want to be. And then if you're not picking something like Enhanced Harvest, you can use this note to AFK something like fishing or woodcutting. But for the relic it's up against, we have Fire Sale. And this makes all item shops with coins as their currency entirely free. This does only apply to shops with the standard interface, aka the general stores. You also have the ability to note any of the things you are purchasing. But this comes with the fact that shops will no longer buy items back from you for GP. Next up we have tier 4, which is the combat tier, and we unlock this at 2000 total points. And Bigger and Badder for Slayer is unlocked, basically unlocking superior creatures, and they have a 1 in 50 chance to spawn. If this is already purchased, you get 150 Slayer points back. It's a very important thing to know. So you can buy it earlier, and you get the Slayer points back if you have done so. Along with this though, Slayer point rewards are increased by 5 times. And they are no longer limited to a minimum of a 10-task streak. And I'm sure at this point there's already been plenty of discussion on which one of these you are picking. Basically, each one just does a massive bump to a specific combat style between range, melee, and mage. Personally, I'm going to be taking the mage route, and if you want to see any of my starting plan or starting step-by-step strategies, both of those are the most recent videos. Now for tier 5, this one we unlock with 4000 points. The XP multiplier at this point goes from 8x to 12x, and minigames bumps up from 3x to 5x. And this is a massive tier because we didn't know any of these relics specifically prior to today's release. First we have Bloodthirsty. Players can receive and cancel Slayer tasks remotely, using either the helmet, the gem, or rings. Superior Slayer creatures will have the following buffs. A spawn chance is increased to 1 in 25. Slayer points are given upon killing one based on Slayer level requirements and difficulty. You also have a 25% chance for a superior Slayer creature to spawn as a Bloodthirsty variant, which then would give 3 rolls on their normal counterparts drop table. So basically you get double drops and triple drops for superiors, but this does not impact the unique superior drops. And then lastly, for that relic, Expeditious and Bracelets of Slaughter have a 35% chance to proc rather than 25. And they no longer consume charges. That's a big one because you only have to make one of each of the bracelets and you have the ability for the entirety of the league. Next, we have the Infernal Gathering tools. And this is basically a set of tools being the axe, the pickaxe, and the harpoon, all of which perform double skilling activities. Any logs chopped are burned, granting fire-making XP. Any ore mined will be smelted into bars if possible, granting smithing XP. And then any fish pot are cooked, granting cooking XP. But another thing to note is that each of these weapons actually perform ticks faster. The axe and the pickaxe will perform 1 tick quicker than normal tools, and then the harpoon performs 2 ticks quicker than normal tools. Then the last relic of this tier we have is Treasure Seeker. NPCs that drop clue scrolls all have a 1 in 15 chance of dropping one. This does include impling jars. The rate of obtaining clue vessels is increased by 10x. Clue scrolls will always have the lowest possible amount of steps. Reward caskets will also give the maximum amount of reward rolls. And then lastly, upon opening a reward casket, there is a chance that the players will receive another reward casket of the same tier. And this is more common the lower the tier of the clue scroll. You can open a casket and then just get an entire extra casket, or you could get like a medium casket from a hard. Still not going to make me pick it because I'm not a big fan of doing that many clue scrolls, but I really love that addition to that relic. Now for our tier 6, we have 7,500 points in order to get this tier. Items will become 4 times as common. First up, we have Equilibrium, and this is each time the player gains XP, they will gain an additional experience equal to 10% of your total level. And this is 20% for the player's lowest level skill. And if you do combine this with Production Prodigy, each item process does trigger this effect, not the entire action. The second choice we have is Farmer's Fortune. Players will have a 20% chance to save the cedar sapling that was planted, which is a nice boost because farming on Iron Man accounts is just not that friendly if you have done it prior. But the second one's actually insane. Farming patches will grow instantly and never catch diseases. So if you have the seeds, your farm runs, you don't have to worry about them taking 20 minutes. You can just sit at one spot and just keep dumping until you get as many supplies as you want and then just move on and do whatever you want to do. Then finally included in that, players will also harvest farming patches 25 times faster. I don't even know how we can comprehend that. Basically seems like you're just going to pick them up instantly. And they'll give triple the usual yield, turning them automatically already into banknotes as well. I have yet to fully decide on which relic I'm taking in this tier, but I cannot wait to see somebody using Farmer's Fortune to see what the hell this looks like when you are pulling from these plants. And the last relic we have in this tier, and this one's a little combination of skilling and combat for tier 6, we have the Ruinous Powers relic. And this basically gives you the Ruinous Powers book, which is an item that allows you to alternate between the standard and the Ruinous Powers prayer book. Ruinous Powers is basically an entire prayer book that got scrapped prior to it ever being released into the game. And depending on the regions you're selecting, this relic could be an auto pick because it has Piety, Rigor, and Augury counterparts that are a little stronger offensively, along with a ton of other prayers that could be quite useful in this league. But then for tier 7, which does include the Weapon Master Special Attack relic, our passives will be the XP multiplier will go from 12 to 16x, minigame points will be boosted by 8x, and the first tier we have yet to see until to this morning's release. The first one is Berserker. Damage dealt is increased by 0.4% for each hit point you have missing. And then alongside that, the player is guaranteed to hit your max hit on an NPC that has full health. Then we have Soul Stealer, and this is the player's minimum hit is increased by 10%. So rather than hitting a 0 to a 50, it would be increased to 5 to 50. Upon a successful hit, you then have a 50% chance that your hit points and prayer are restored by 10% of the damage you dealt. So a 50-50 chance if you do hit something like a 50, that you would get 5 prayer points and hit points back. The Scythe's multi-hit effect will only apply if all 3 hits are hitting the same target. So this one's a slight bump to DPS regardless, and then also a slight buff to some HP and prayer regen. And then the last one in tier 7 we have is the Weapon Master. And this is a guaranteed successful hit for special attacks. You also have a minimum damage of 20% of your max hit when using special attacks. Your special attack energy is also restored by 30% every 30 seconds. The Light Bearer will increase this to 30% every 15 seconds. And if you do not have enough special attack energy to perform a special attack, you can then use life points by sacrificing 25 for each additional special attack you want to use. Both of these last 2 tiers between 7 and 8 are going to be very difficult decisions, but at the same time, you have plenty of time before you actually have to make them. Lastly, for tier 8, we did know all 3 of these by the time we got today's release. They are Guardian, Executioner, and Undying Retribution. Undying Retribution is upon your death, the player's hit points and prayer points are fully restored, dealing up to 200% of the player's prayer level. And this only works in the same places that Retribution does. There's a 3-minute cooldown between uses, and this damage effect does not work on NPCs that are immune to recoil damage. But this does exclude Nex, Hispori, Vorkath, and all wilderness bosses. And a slight thing to note is that dying with this relic does not affect points in raids, because you technically don't die. Now for the Executioner Axe. You're basically given a Sage's Axe, which allows you to instantly kill targets that have 20% or less health remaining. The Axe's attack range is 6 tiles or 7 tiles on long range, and NPCs with range damage reduction are still applied when using the Sage's Axe. So example, 1/7 range damage reduction from the Kraken. And then the last one in tier 8, and I did completely forget to mention this, is 24,000 points, and we finally get the 5x drop rates when you unlock this tier. But Guardian gives you the Guardian Horn, which allows you to summon a Guardian Thrall that will 1, stick around for 30 minutes, deal a damage roll between 6 to 15 and an attack speed of 5, and an accuracy roll of 45,000. Which realistically just makes it a guaranteed hit, but it also does damage between 6 and 15 when it does. The Guardian Thrall attacks with whatever style the NPC has the lowest defense bonus for, and in multi-combat areas, it will attempt to cast an AoE attack if the primary target is weak to Ranger Mage. Archaeus Thralls can be used alongside the Guardian Thrall. Players can't bring the Guardian Horn into locations where the items are restricted, but they did make the Gauntlet an exception to this rule, so you will be able to take it into the Gauntlet. But with that, those are all 8 tiers of the relics we are getting in Leagues 4. Quite a few of which we already did know with all of the reveals, but a big thing we didn't know was which tiers are getting which of the passive upgrades, and what all of the point requirements were going to be for what tiers. Feel free to leave me a comment below what relics you're going to be picking for each of these tiers. Regardless, we are finally very close to the release of Leagues 4. If you guys did enjoy this video, consider dropping a like, it massively helps me out. But good luck on your Leagues 4 journey, and I will catch you guys in the next video.